are great. All right. Welcome to Powered by Authenticity. I'm so excited for tonight. I am joined by Melissa Bernstein. Melissa, welcome to the podcast.
I am so glad to be here. Authenticity is probably my favorite word.
Mine too. It's what fuels me. It's just so, it's just ingrained in part of, I think, who I am. And it sounds like you're very similar. So thank you for coming on tonight and sharing your story.
It is my absolute pleasure.
And I would love for you to share with our listeners. We're streaming live on social platforms. So I always love live recording. It's so fun. Would you like to share a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Gosh, there's too much to share. I've had led so many different lives, but I guess I will share that I am a highly overexcitable person. I am a creative, and that makes me very sensitive in pretty much every area where you can be sensitive. And I think early on, that made me feel like I didn't fit in the world. And I had a really difficult first 2 decades of my life, I would say, trying to be extrinsically who I thought I needed to be popular and liked and belong, but always feeling that I was being inauthentic in being that shell of a self and not being able to show the quirky, odd, creative person that I actually am. And it really wasn't until Doug and I, by a fluke, started dating and decided at age 22 and 24 to pool our meager life savings and his boyfriend and girlfriend start a toy company that I realized that my creativity, which I didn't even know I had, could be used for some good and could be channeled into something that actually like could delight children. And that was it was like I could breathe fresh air for the very first time, and I felt a sense of meaning to the curse that I had always believed did nothing but addle my brain. So for the next 3 decades plus, Doug and I built our toy company, Melissa and Doug, and we grew it into a large company. Went from two of us in his parents' garage to larger and larger offices, and ultimately had over thousands of people and all that stuff,
Amazing.
which isn't as much fun as it seems. It's much more fun when you're agile and little. And we actually fully exited and sold that company last year, which is a story all in and of
Yeah.
itself. It's very traumatic when something I think you started at 22 and was your first child becomes woven into your DNA to kind of set it
Right.
free. But we then started a second company called Lifelines that is still making tangible products. So I'm still channeling chaos into tangible form, but it's now products for people like me and me. So for the first time ever, I'm experiencing the joy of creating products for myself, which I'd say is really cool. And I'm so glad now that I look back that I took the leap and tried something else and didn't just believe I could only create in one domain. It's fun
Yeah.
to try something new. And I think a good lesson for everyone that it's terrifying to step out of what you know and has become so comfortable after 35 years. But I'm really glad that Doug and I decided to do it a second time because it's no easier, but it's really, I'd say, intoxicating.
And I think I read. Do you have a large number of children? Is that correct?
I also left that out. I was just thinking, right when I stopped, I said, "Oh my gosh, yes." So I create both products and children because I love conceiving in one form or another. And Doug and I also created 6 children together. So we do have 6 children, which, as hard as starting a company has been, it's not nearly as hard as raising six children. That has been, woo, it's been the biggest challenge of my life, the biggest joy too.
Yes.
But I would say, very, very bittersweet in many ways, and not easy.
Yeah. How old are they? What's the age ranges?
They range now from 17 to 31.
Oh, wow.
So we
That's
still have
amazing.
one in high school finishing his junior year. So we're like inching closer to that, sort of empty
The
nest.
empty nest syndrome. I know it.
But it's really not empty nest. It's there's no such thing. I feel like, I hear from them. They need me just as much, if not more, now that they're sort of like in college or on their own. It really doesn't change a whole lot.
No, I can understand that feeling 100%.
How about
Well,
you? How you have a 32-year-old son?
yep, and I have a 19-year-old daughter.
Wow, that's
Yep,
amazing.
yep. So,
Almost like
producer
two
Ken,
only children.
it was like two only children. And it's funny. Everybody says boys and girls are so different, which is true. And it was also raising my daughter the high school years through the pandemic was definitely um, it just something that was really interesting to try to parent through.
I agree with you. That
Yeah,
was so challenging.
yeah,
I had every age. I had college, I had high school, I had middle
yeah.
school, and no one you could say had it easier than the other.
No, no. It was just it was. I keep telling my daughter she's part of a time in history that if you didn't live it, looking back at it, would you believe that it actually happened? You know, it's just
It's so true. What a
yeah,
year that was. It's like everything stopped,
yeah,
schedules were wiped clean,
yeah,
and suddenly it was in a sense, I mean, if there is, other than obviously so much sickness and, tragedy in that, but in terms of showing us what mattered, I think it did that.
yeah. It sure did. There's parts of it, honestly, I kind of miss some days. You know, there was a calm, like a quietness in our streets, right? Like it was for our little town. And I worked in healthcare, so there's parts of it that I definitely would never want to go back to. But it was definitely an interesting time for sure.
Yeah, I agree with
Yeah.
you. I agree with you. I mean, and for us, all our kids came home,
Hmm.
which they had never all been home together, because there's a 14-year,
Yeah.
almost like you, a 14-year age difference between the oldest and the youngest. So my two sons had never really spent time together. And in that, it was such a gift
Yeah.
to be for, it was like 10 months, basically no one left.
Yeah. 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 So definitely, well, there's a positive that came out of it, spending that much
Yeah.
time as a family for sure. Yeah.
I think part of my life's meaning has been in trying to find the silver lining in everything that happens, whether the most tragic or the most beautiful. And I think COVID was one of those times that really forced us to kind of look on the, shiny side, like how can we, even when loved ones are getting really sick, and,
Yeah.
how can we find the meaning in this?
Yep. Yeah. I agree. There's definitely difficult, but every day it was like, okay, one positive at least every day is to help get you through it. So the same can be said for now. You know, just find one positive every day, and guide from that positive. But well,
Exactly.
I can't wait to talk about how you went from a toy toy developer into lifelines, and we'd like to do a little bit of an icebreaker just to kind of get to know our guests a little bit
Let's
too.
do
So
it.
I'm really curious. What are you reading right now? Anything on your on your book list?
Oh my gosh, yes. I'm obsessed with Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. He's an
Okay.
author who wrote the book Flow and Creativity, and I'm reading one of his, it's an older book, but I am finding it so revelatory. It's called The Evolving Self, and
Oh,
it's
okay.
basically talking about the brain and why we do the things we do. And when I'm in love with a book, I read all nonfiction because I love learning.
Yep.
And in my TV shows, I do fiction, like I love fantasy, but for some reason in my books, and I love something when I keep in the middle, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And I take notes on what I write. And I literally have so many pages of notes on that book because I'm fascinated by it.
Oh, that's I'm gonna have to look that up. That's that's a good one.
He's
Awesome.
amazing in general.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I like to reach out to the people I admire and
Yeah.
ask to speak with them. He would have absolutely been one of them, but he passed away, I think, a few years ago.
Aw, that's too
Yeah.
bad. Yeah. Well, it's great that you love his books that much, so it helps keep him alive for everybody. So that's good. I'm gonna look that one up. Thank you for sharing.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
Hey, producer Ken, how's it going tonight?
It's going good.
Okay, what's on your Audible list?
Yeah, I don't do a lot of paper books. I do a lot of audiobooks. Kind of between right now, though.
Mhm.
One coming out that I have pre-ordered, "Undeniable" by Cameron Haynes.
Oh,
He's a like an ultra marathoner and bow hunter. This is his second book that's coming out.
cool. Yeah, that sounds right up to. That's
That
Ken's
sounds
a
really
marathoner.
cool.
Yeah, it does. I'm
How
I've
about
got
you?
two that I've got started right now. One is the Matthew Perry biography, and the other one is called Fail Forward by Jacob Brown. He's a transformational speaker and has a book out as well. So I've
Oh,
got both
wow.
of those started. Yeah.
I'm always
I
reading like 5 or 6 books at one time.
I know. I came home with more books 2 weekends ago. My husband's like, "Did you need to?" I'm like, "I did. I really did."
Oh my gosh. I think you can't be my friend unless you have literally like hundreds of books that you'll probably never read stacked up in your
Yes,
office.
yes, yes. I love all of them.
Yeah. There are always more things that I want to read than I have time to read.
Yep,
But
yep.
it's one of my favorite ways to. I feel like my sangha, my spiritual group, came from reading the works of those. Most of them, unfortunately, are dead white guys who are not here to actually speak with. But I felt as if they were my friends.
Oh, I love that. I love you get that connected to it. It's just you're on the right path for you. So,
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
thank you for sharing and letting us do that. I love to hear what everybody's reading or listening to or eating. That's always a big topic too.
I love that too.
uh, well, how I just would love to understand how did you make the shift, or what was it about that time that you decided to shift from Melissa and Doug toys to Lifelines?
It's an amazing question. And, it was an evolution like most things are. And I think, Doug and I are, I'd say, true entrepreneurs in the sense that we love the blank slate. And we love the chaotic nature of starting something and the intoxication of figuring out how it's going to work and working through all the challenges and having to be very adaptable and flexible and doing things on the fly. And of course, that's how it was at Melissa and Doug, because it started with just the two of us and we
Yeah,
grew, building one brick at a time. And I think it was very, very entrepreneurial for, about 2 decades. We really broke every mold of how it was done and how you're supposed to do it. And we really operated with beginner's mind every single day. Like we don't care how it's done. We're going to break every rule. And we did. I mean,
yep.
every single rule that people and every single thing people told us you can never do, we ended up doing, by the way. And
I
and
love
it
that.
gave us that chip on our shoulder that made us do it. But I think it started to become a big company, as I mentioned earlier.
Mhm.
And the more it became a big company, honestly, the less fun it began to be because suddenly we had a lot of responsibilities and obligations and we had so many employees and we had employee issues and suddenly we were working with the biggest customers, and when you work with big customers, they want you to create unique lines for them, exclusive lines. And I'm a white space creative and I like to just have ideas and bring them to life. But it was starting to be even my design process was starting to need to be much more focused on what the customer wanted, which is like not my
Yeah.
desire at all. So it was gradually becoming less and less fun, more and more issues, at every sort of inflection point, there were new issues. And you think you start to get bigger and bigger, and you're many hundreds of millions of dollars, and you think, oh, it's going to be easy. It actually gets harder. I'd
Yeah.
say the easiest times were not at the very beginning, but sort of in that phase when we were growing and things were humming. But when you get that big, growth is like $50 million a year. And you're like, how am I going to, create $50 million a year of like
Yeah.
new stuff?
Yes.
Especially when you're losing stuff always. That's just how it works. So I would say it lost a lot of the fun. And we started to think, maybe we want to have people who've run big companies lead this as opposed to the two of us. I mean, we were 22 and 24 when we started, and like we don't have any experience running a big company, nor do we have any passion or desire to run a big company. So
Yeah.
gradually, as we got larger, we started bringing on people who could help us. And ultimately, I think we sort of ceded the control of that to other people. But we wanted to get back to that intoxicating feeling of the beginning and growing
Mhm.
something, and the world is our oyster, and boundless expanse of white space, and being able to write our own rules as we went in a new category.
Yeah.
And never thought we'd honestly, I never wanted to start another company, and surely he didn't either. But as it happened, my life experience and going on my own journey of self discovery and awareness led to my having ideas for well being products, much to my husband's chagrin.
Yeah.
And I tried to hide it. I started having, as I was sort of going through my practice, I had to create a well-being practice as I started to go through my own therapeutic process for the first time in my life. And it really coincided nicely, sort of with Melissa and Doug winding down, because it definitely called into question meaning. It definitely called into question my lack of authenticity, even though I was creating, which was my lifeline. I still hadn't accepted the curse of being me. So I went through this really deep self-discovery awareness process in my late 40s. And it led to creating a practice.
And I think we just lost Melissa there for a second. We'll get her back. Looks like we happen to lose Melissa. Fascinating story, though. And I will say, as we're waiting for her to be able to join back in, I personally am using one of her Lifeline products, and it's absolutely amazing. So I'm hoping she can hop back in to be able to tell us a little bit more about the products and the new company that she's been able to start. And we'll just give her a couple more seconds to see if she can hop back in, and hopefully she'll be able to. And while we're just waiting for Melissa to come back, I think this story is one of amazing resilience, and one that we're starting to hear more and more on the podcast about how when people have to find a change in their time, they find a purpose, and they go back and find a new purpose. And Melissa, I was just sharing, I'm using one of your Lifeline products,
I
and
know, I heard you. I could hear you. You just couldn't hear me.
oh, that's awesome. Yeah, and I think it's just so great also how you've you've got this journey that you're going through, and kind of how you're evolving from Melissa and Doug. And I'll pause now, I'll let you regroup. I was just sharing with the listeners about how closely I'm connecting to what you're sharing.
Oh, I really appreciate that. I'm using my grounding stone too, which is like one of my favorite products, and I don't go anywhere without it. Um, but yeah, as I was going through this journey to kind of accept myself authentically, which meant I had to accept the high highs and the very low lows, I realized that I needed something. I needed a practice to kind of keep me here, sort of grounded in the moment so that I could continue to do what I do and not either fly off into the boundless expanse of white space and get lost in that creative realm, which is intoxicating, but I can't live up there, or go really low, which I can also do pretty easily, into that sort
Yeah.
of abyss of despair and not come back up. So I realized that I kind of needed a practice of sorts. And I ended up writing two books. I wrote a book called Lifelines, which was my memoir, and basically for the first time kind of sharing that I am this weird, deep, dark, despairing creative. And for the first time, not that anyone necessarily cared, but I hoped that I could give a voice to some creative types who people want what we make, but they don't accept us for who we are. And I thought if I can maybe, give voice to that, because on the outside, people think I'm this shiny, everything's great person, but I'm really hiding the truth of who I am, which is, a deeply emotional, sensitive, churning person. So that was really an incredible journey, very difficult. Took me 5 years to kind of accept myself and really deal with all the sort of negative beliefs that I had lived with. And once I did that, I was like, okay, I accept myself, but now how do I be my best self? And then that was my second book, which is called Practice Makes Purpose, which is a guide to sort of building resilience in the areas of your life so you can reach your full potential. And one of the areas was sort of how to cognitively build your practice so that you can untether from rumination, however and whenever you want. And that was one of the hardest things for me. I get stuck here very often.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be here, which is where all my creativity lies,
Yeah.
but I get stuck here. And I needed a way to do that. And I realized, kind of with shock and wonder one day, that my senses were this incredible portal to interrupt the stress response and activate a state of calm and joy. And I was like, wait a second, we all have innate senses.
Yep.
Why aren't we tapping into them? And then I realized we are tapping into them. It's just unconscious. We're not intentionally tapping into them. So
Yep.
that really started this Lifelines journey. I realized that if our senses are the quickest and actually the only way to interrupt the stress response, why aren't we using them more deliberately?
Yep. No, the biggest part of this that I love is the fact that you were able to, um, get out of your head, because that is so hard to do. It's like there's so much that I know every day. Everybody's like, how do you disconnect the noise? I call it my noise, right? Like I've got so much going on, and I just love how that you've been able to journey through that, and also go back to finding your happy space and the creative. So, just hands off. And I think I really wish more people would take the time, and it's I know everybody's busy, but even just through, I think, meditation and just taking that time a little bit for themselves to say, okay, I've got to get rid of the noise, reconnect to myself and what I want my journey to look like, and follow that path in life. I know it's scary, but just try to connect back to yourself. I don't think people take the time for that.
Exactly. It's a
Yeah.
practice, and
Yeah.
you have to first want it, and it
Yeah.
has to be something you're trying. And I can tell you that, since I've embraced this practice, and since every time I feel myself sort of going off my equanimity, I engage in the practice to come back home to the present moment, I'm more creative than I've ever been. And, by my age, most of the time people say, like, your fluid intelligence is gone and your intelligence has been crystallized. And, it's more now about throwing out like wisdom to the younger set. But, I still feel more creative than I've ever been. And I think it's because I keep, I don't get stuck here. I don't
Yeah.
lose myself in thought anymore. And I shouldn't say anymore. I do less, right? It's human to do
Yep.
that. And I will do that till my end days. But now that I can practice and I can more easily say, up, I see it's happening. You're not going to go there. Don't get stuck in the past or the future. Come back home. Um, and,
Yep.
I was doing it actually right before this call because we just heard that tariffs are going up by like
Yeah.
36% or something like that. And like we make all our products overseas. I mean, this is like
Yeah.
really, really bad for us.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know what it's going to do to people like us. And so
Yep.
many, like 90% of products are made overseas. So I
Yep.
was like, oh my gosh, starting to go up there, like what's going to happen to lifelines? And then I was like, you know what? I'm coming back to the present moment.
Yep.
And like, what happens will happen. We'll figure it out. And
Yep.
so I literally took my grounding stone. I put my favorite oil in it, which is citrus calm. And I just was like, come back down.
I So my daughter in college, I wish they taught this in college because I see this in so many kids now that are, we're asking them to make these big decisions. What are you going to do for the rest of your life and as a
Oh,
teenager? And then when things aren't going right, what do? You get stuck in your head. It's not right. It's not right. And when I keep, just like you said, bring myself back to the moment. So I think that this is, and I just me thinking out loud here. I really wish this was something that our younger generation would understand. It's okay not to be so anxious. Bring yourself back. What happens, happens. We can always work through it. But I think it's just so tough.
yeah. Well, college students are our target market. And our first inaugural partner was Barnes and Noble College.
Yeah.
And I gave lots of lectures and workshops at colleges, at universities. And, I'll say it in a slightly different way. Anxiety is part of being human.
Hmm.
So if we're going to be human, we will have anxiety. We have a fight or flight response that's wired into our physiology that anytime we are feeling fear or the uncertainty of the unknown, we're going to go into that fear response. We're going to
Yep.
flee, we're going to fight, or we're going to freeze. So that's like to deny that. And I think what's happened in this generation is we started to believe that that was bad. That
Yeah.
when you feel anxious, oh my gosh, something's wrong. I need to get rid of it.
Hmm.
Well, we don't need to get rid of it. We just need to understand that we can still do things and be anxious. We can still, one
Yep.
of the titles, one of my favorite titles, it's not necessarily my favorite book, but it's my favorite title is Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And we can still feel anxiety, knowing that if we know why we're feeling it, oh, I'm doing something that's really scary and new, and I'm scared, and that's my you know uh, my natural response that any human would
Yep.
go through. But guess what? Once I understand that, I can still do this scary thing, and then realize that like everything's okay. And just last week, I have been doing live shows on the shopping channel QVC,
Oh,
and I find it really, really stressful.
yeah.
It's not my thing. You have to wear you have to have hair and makeup and nails, which I don't wear any makeup. I don't do my hair and I don't do my nails. And you have to talk in this like shiny voice and hawk your product. And it's so not me. Um, but I need to do it for our product because they're a really popular method of distribution and their customers buy a lot of products. So when I do it, before I do it, I am stressed. And I've learned, but I still have to do it. So, I have to feel the fear and still go on live, work with the host, do my segment, and then I do my segment, and the second I'm done, I'm like, oh my gosh, thank goodness. And then the stress, and I feel like you did it, and I've
Yeah.
done it now like 5 times live in the last, I don't know, few months. And the more I do it, the more I'm like working through the fear and becoming comfortable with it. So I still feel fear every single day. It's a really good sign. It means you're doing things that are hard for you. If you never feel fear, it means you're living way too comfortably in that safe box. So anxiety and fear is a precursor to growth. And without that, you will not grow.
I love that. Everything about what you just said, that's just amazing. And I love that. The other question I just wanted to get your perspective on, because what you just said just resonates. And I think one of the other things that kids are sometimes afraid of, or even adults, because it seems like it's a weakness, is just asking for help. Either when you're in your head or when you do feel that fear factor, going to ask for help for somebody to help you through it. Any thoughts on just seeing that word help as a positive versus a negative?
Yeah, I mean, our mindset in meaning. I studied meaning to bring meaning, and the the core tenets of what it meant to bring meaning into your life. I studied it, and I'm now a meaning coach. And I think part of meaning in life is your mindset. So I think if you believe that asking for help is weak, then you won't ask for help. You'll believe I need, and that, believe me, that was one of my erroneous beliefs was I need to do everything on my own, right?
Yeah.
Asking for help is weak. So in that vein, I never asked for help. I would
Mm-hmm.
like run myself into the ground before asking for help. And now I know that doing that actually made me what's called a martyr, right? A martyr is someone who sacrifices themselves to serve others and ends up really bitter and resentful and exhausted. So I went that path. It is not a good path. It
Yeah.
takes a long time to repair from being a martyr. So I would say, I think saying that there are times when I need help, and that's actually a sign of strength. Now I realize not asking for help is a sign of weakness, right? It's
Yeah.
actually the opposite of what I believed. It's saying like I'm I'm a robot. I'm superhuman, and I'm not. So
Yeah.
now when I ask for help, I've reframed it to say, when I ask for help, it's a sign of courage. It's a sign that I accept my mortality, I accept my humanness, I accept my fallibility, and I'm willing to ask others for help. And I think if you do it judiciously and you start small, so you have to want it first. If you don't want
Mm-hmm.
it, then you've got to go get help to really repair that flawed belief. But once you say, I do want to ask for help sometimes because it's really hard not to, then I start small, and I, even with my kids, I was a martyr. I did everything for them and never sat down literally and drove myself into the ground. It was bad. So little things like, could you, help me put water on the table? And my kids at first would look at me like, what do you mean you do that? I don't do that. But I'd say, please, I'm tired. I had to say things that I never would say, like I'm tired or I've had a long day. Like it
Yeah.
would really mean so much to me. And they'd do it and I'd be much too effusive. I'd be like, thank you so much. When it's really something they should be doing naturally.
Yeah.
But I had built a very bad muscle in them. And little by little, you become like, oh, that was really nice that they put water on the table. That was one less thing I had to do. Or, when they wouldn't clean up their dishes after dinner, I would say, listen, from now on, could all of you, when you're done eating, take your plate and put it in the sink. Like that's all you have to do. You don't have to actually clean it, but put it in the sink so no one has
Yeah.
to clear the table. And then they look at you like please, it would help me a lot. So these little things,
Yeah.
and you realize, wow, that's really helpful.
Yep. I think we could do that in the corporate world too. There's ways to incorporate that, and to your point, start small, and
You
tip
have
your
to
toe
start
in the water.
small,
Yeah.
especially if
Yeah.
you've never done it. I had never done it. My badge of honor was I don't need help. I don't ask for help. It was a sign of strength, I thought. So for me, it was very, very gradual. And I still fall back into the no, it's okay. And then I'm like, can you help me? And it feels so nice. It really does. It feels like you're not shouldering the burden, of the world yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's so important. The world's heavy enough.
What'd you say?
So just asking. I said the world is heavy enough right now, so it's
It
nice to
really
try to
is.
take
It
care.
really is. We need all the
Yeah,
support and help we can get.
we really do. Well, I loved our chat. I did have to tell you something fun though. So I have your pen that I use at work now,
Thank
and
you.
it's so funny because first of all, I love the smell. So I just I love the aroma.
Which of the scents is it?
It's the oh gosh,
Is it citrus? Is it floral? Is it walk in the woods,
walk
woodsy?
in the woods. It's walk in the woods. And I love it. But what I
Thank
found
you.
myself doing is I fidget with it. Like
Yeah, that's what
I'm
it's
always
for.
fidgeting, and I never like really connected. And I'm like, oh, I now when I'm in meetings, you'll find me just sitting there fidgeting with my pen.
Fidgeting, see the irony about fidgeting is it actually improves concentration.
Yeah,
Like you think you're fidgeting, you're not focusing, but it's the opposite. It actually quiets your mind and focuses. We studied all the senses, and
I love it.
it's very cool how these sensory tools really help us. Now, I always say, do you need them? Just like you don't necessarily need an open ended toy to play. You
Right.
just need your imagination. It's the same thing here. Like
Yep.
you can go out in nature and, do the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 5 things that you see, 4 things that you hear, 3 things that you smell, and get every bit of that sensory immersion that you would get with one of our, tools. It's just a little bit easier when I'm doing a podcast or I'm on stage and I can have this little friend in my hand.
Yep.
Because if you think about it, so many of us start up here, right? Our vibrational frequency is all the way up here. So if you start up here, and I think about students like going into a test, or if you start up here and then something goes wrong, let's say you look at the first question and you're like, which is a dream I have recurringly, like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I'm in the wrong class. Like, I didn't study any of this. I don't understand this question. If you're already up here, you're going to go off the rails, right? You're going to
Yep.
have an all-out panic attack because you're
Yep.
you're you're already at a heightened state. But if before any of these, triggering events, you like deliberately and intentionally ground yourself and you say, I'm about to go into this big meeting or this big test. I'm going to take a deep breath. I'm going to smell my favorite scent, which is now associated with grounding and calm. And that's what you're trying to do with your brain. You're trying to say, every time I pick this up, every time I smell my scent, it means I'm safe. I'm okay. I don't have to go in fight or flight. This is not a
Yeah.
big deal. I got this. So now for me, because I was one of those that was up here to
Yep.
start with everything I did. And then I would go into tests in college. I was notorious. I'd go into tests and blank out. I would literally not remember a thing, and then I have an all out panic
Yeah.
attack. So
Yeah.
now, whenever I'm doing something that could lead to, sorry, my dogs,
Oh, no.
could lead to one of those, I actually ground myself first. So I'm starting here, and then if something goes wrong, I go a little bit up here, but I'm not off the rails.
Right.
I'm able to respond rather than react. I'm able to actually deal with it in a much more rational, reasonable way. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
It does. It really does. And, I love that. And I love that it's also accessible. For me, sitting at my desk, I can't go outside and do the
Yeah,
5 4 3 2 1, and I
exactly.
have it right with me. So definitely. Well, Melissa, I could talk to you all day. So I know that we are kind of winding down on our time,
Yeah,
but
but if you have
anything,
another question, I'm totally fine.
well, anything else you want to share? Anything else on the horizon that you think would be fun to share as far as things that you're working on?
Yeah, sure. So I just finished actually last week writing a book that's coming out this fall. And it's
Yay!
called The Heart of Entrepreneurship: Crafting Your Authentic Recipe for Success.
I
And
love that.
it's really it's so meaningful to me because one of my other passions that I've done for almost 2 decades is mentor young entrepreneurs. Once Doug and I had no mentors, and we really, it was really hard for us, and we made a lot of mistakes, and we always
Yeah,
wanted mentors, and even when we got mentors, they were not the right mentors, and they
yeah.
gave us a lot of really flawed advice based on their own experience and what they thought we were, which we weren't. So I wanted, once I got to a point when I had learned so many lessons, hard fought lessons that I thought could help others, I started to mentor young entrepreneurs. And we started an accelerator called Melissa and Doug Entrepreneurs at Duke University in 2013, and started mentoring a whole cohort of entrepreneurs every year. So this is basically the amalgamation of all my entrepreneurship experience in starting these two companies and all my mentorship, um, combining together and creating sort of a recipe that can be followed to better increase the likelihood that your beautiful ideas that are part of your essence have a chance to come out authentically and make it onto a shelf or into someone's hands.
I love that so much. There's first of all, thank you for mentoring those at university. It's when you're starting out, having somebody just to help support you is so important. And to your point, I look at the market right now, and there's so many coaches, and there's so many, different things that are available, but no one person's cookie cutter. And finding that right fit, and just, hearing some expert advice is just so important, especially if you've had something, especially been given advice in the past that kind of took you, you know, either not to success or down a different direction or whatever it may be. So, gosh, that's exciting, and
It's
thank you
really
for doing that.
exciting. I feel like I have maybe like 100 daughters. Most of my sweet spot. I mean, I mentor a lot of males too, but my
Yes,
sweet spot, and for some reason they are more attracted, are the women who have a harder
yes,
time with entrepreneurship anyway, because largely we're not as confident, we're not as vocal, we're not as sure of ourselves. So many of my calls, most of my calls are, I just talked with two this morning, they're much more about life. And that's why I love it. Yes, it's under the guise of their passion coming forward in their business, but the truth is, all we're really talking about is how you develop the confidence to be authentic and bring
yes,
your ideas out into the world and overcome the fear of rejection and the fear of failure that's so endemic in being human.
yep.
So they end up being really beautiful relationships. And I think so many families, parents are so terrified of their kids not being successful that, I feel bad sometimes because I feel like I'm going against, so many of the parents that are basically saying, find a career and do the most successful thing. And these poor, students are saying to me, like, I don't want to do that. Like,
Yeah.
it's not who I am. I'm miserable. I don't want to, I want to follow my dream. And I'm kind of like saying, you know what? I mean, you should follow your dream. Like you're going to have to figure out how to deal with your issue with your family.
Yep.
But, I had the same issue. My parents didn't want me to at all to start a company, and they were terrified for me when I quit my lucrative investment banking job and decided to, start a company. But I realize now that it was only because of fear.
Yes.
It wasn't because they didn't, well, they didn't think I'd be successful, but they didn't really doubt me. They were just so
Yes.
scared from their own perspective. And once we made it, lo and behold, they were the proudest they could ever be of us. So I
Yep.
say to these students, like, it's not that they don't, trust you. They're just scared for you. And they
Yep.
feel like their duty as a parent is to keep you safe and successful. So you have to explain to them, if you feel passionately enough about it, that like you're doing what you believe is right and you will be successful no matter what.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that. So the other part of that, and then I'll let you go. Just one thing I think of also when you are talking through that, it's 2025 and there's just no job descriptions anymore. So if somebody has in their heart that this is going to be a success, then that's their particular job description, and
I
whoever would
love
have thought of
that.
whoever would have thought about influencers or anything like that, but there are so many people out there paving their own way. And I just think it's such a unique place for us to be. And if somebody's feeling it, then like I said, that's that
I
person's
agree.
ultimate
I
goal.
think the
Yeah.
best thing I can say to my kids is follow your dream, and you can always I always say to them, the conventional job will always be waiting for you. Like
Yes.
that's the fallback. Don't do that as your first, do the thing that is the audacious goal, Like try that. If it doesn't work, you can always work a corporate job. So
Yes.
they followed, I have two entrepreneurs and one who's working with us at Lifeline. So I feel like they've done that largely, which makes me happy.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Well, I hope you'll come back when your book comes out. I would
I
love
would
to.
love it. Oh my
Uh,
gosh, it would make me so happy.
I love that. We will get that. When you've got a launch date, we'll connect and we'll get you on the podcast because I mean, first of all, I could talk to you all day because you're just amazing, and this has just been such a fun conversation. I feel like we have a lot of things in common, and it would be fun to keep chatting. So I can't wait to read your book, and it's just
Yeah.
I love this conversation, and I really appreciate you being here tonight.
Oh, it's my pleasure. This has been so wonderful. And anything I can ever do for you, let me know.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And hey, producer Ken, I appreciate you being
Producer
here.
Ken, thank you.
You got
Woo
it.
woo.
there's a fun story behind tech and producer Ken and I, so sometime I'll have to share that with you. But it's great to have him here. And I'm actually in a community arts center. So our local community arts center has a podcast room, and they support me through the use of a grant that we get to come in and use their beautiful studio. So
I love that. That's how it should be. Talk about asking for help, right? And leaning on others.
Fun fact, I actually cried when they said they'd let me use it for free. So it was just such
It was
because
serendipitous. It meant you were on the right path.
yeah. So it was my passion, and they were supporting that. So nothing
I
nothing
love
felt
it.
better.
I love that. Well, I can't wait to talk again soon. Thank you so much for this opportunity to reach your beautiful followers.
Oh, thank you, and thank you again for being here. I really appreciate it. Thanks to everybody who's been following along, and to all of our listeners. Thank you for continuing to be here with us, and we appreciate every single listen. Melissa, have a great night.
You too. Bye. Bye, Ken.
Right.